The much-awaited Partygate report by the Privileges Committee is now out. Well, MPs have concluded that the former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has deliberately misled MPs over Partygate. Well, the committee has concluded that Johnson had knowledge of the COVID rules and guidance. He was aware that the parties were a breach of the rules and guidance that took place in number 10, and that he failed to tell the House about his own knowledge of the gatherings. Johnson has long assured that he was told the gatherings are within the rules of COVID restrictions. But the committee says the proof of assurances to him by senior civil servants were not presented by him to the House nor the committee. Well, our correspondent here in London, Alex Isaac, has been poring over the details. Lots to go through here, Alex. Damning any way that you put this report out, and we know that it won't impact Boris as much because he has already resigned. The UK's Conservative Party as well, it's also in a state of disarray. We're going to get to that shortly, but first of all, about the report, what more do we know?
Well, absolutely right there. There is going to be a lot of fallout. In fact, we understand that Boris Johnson has put a statement out. I haven't got it myself yet to read, but I understand that he has already said that this is a disgrace. But let's go back to this report. So it came out about 20 minutes ago here at local time. So going through this 108-piece report, that the main headlines of this is the fact that they say that Boris Johnson did, in fact, mislead Parliament over Partygate while he was in office. Now, they said that they would have given him a 90-day suspension. Now, that is incredibly high, but that is because he is not just an average MP or, in fact, a civil servant. It's because he was the Prime Minister at the time, and he changed and misled because of his role, really. So they had put this high sanction on it. Of course, nothing can be done now due to the fact that he did resign on Friday. But other things that we have seen in this report as well, they said that it was contempt for him to even release any of this statement on Friday when he did. He obviously got to see the committee report ahead of the rest of us, and therefore some of the information that he leaked was in fact contempt. So we will see how that will go forward. There's also other parts of this report which are very damning as well. They say that he is to blame for the intimidation of those on the committee as well, and that it was undermining the democratic process of the House. So they are big words, especially when the Prime Minister is the one that committed this undermining of the democratic process as well. The report also says that Mr. Johnson was complicit in the campaign of abuse, as I said, with the attempted intimidation of the committee. And they also looked at those particular events and found that 5 or 6 of them, which he had said had been a core reason to hold those parties, that they were thanking staff for working hard and raising morale, in fact, were no reason to hold parties, specifically when it came to being as in close mindset. And it does seem that they were suggesting in this report that they asked Boris Johnson to come back again after he gave his initial statement saying that he didn't do anything on purpose. They asked him to return again and go through all of this, and unfortunately he said right then, no, I don't want to. This has come out in the report as well, that they gave him an opportunity to go back on what he originally said, and then he decided that he didn't want to go ahead. So the committee report is quite damning. It's quite a personal damning statement as well. I can understand, obviously, if they feel like they have been abused and intimidated by Boris Johnson and those that back him, then of course, you know, this is all coming out, and he has, as I said, committed contempt. So although the sanctions that they would have imposed on him they can't do because he has resigned, it may well be that this will go forward and something else may occur after. How they're going to process this contempt is yet to be seen.
Yeah, and actually I've got Boris Johnson's statement in front of me now. It's 1,700-word statement, so he's certainly not mincing his words. He's called it a deranged conclusion, his final thrust of my political assassination. It's a scathing 17-word statement on the Privileges Committee report. He says he finds the findings deranged and beneath contempt. I mean, this is quite unbelievable. What happens to the Conservative Party now, Alex, do you think?
That's a really good question, Katie, because there is still this infighting. Even before we got this report out earlier, we had Nadine Dorries all over Twitter complaining that she feels that there has been real people within her own party have been out to get her. Boris Johnson is called, the committee party a kangaroo court, Jacob Rees-Mogg. There's not so many of those names coming out that have already said that the people within their own party are against them. That doesn't look good for going forward for the general election, for these other 3 seats that now they have to fill, which we expect these by-elections to come out in about a month, so the end of July. So what's going to happen then? People are already losing faith in the Conservative Party, and they seem to be losing faith inwardly as well. Rishi Sunak has a lot on his plate at the moment, and he doesn't really need this to be at the highlight of all of the news channels. He wants to be talking about the other things that people in the UK care about, the cost of living crisis, the strikes that are going on, all of those things which are really affecting the day-to-day person. And unfortunately, he has to deal with the petty backstabbing that's in his own parliament, in his own backbench. He's got a lot to do, and I'm not really sure that he can do it and he can move forward. There seems to be, since Boris Johnson was ousted, it does feel like a lot of those backbenchers were really adamant that Boris Johnson was the right Prime Minister, and ever since then they've been really fighting gung-ho to try and prove their point. But sadly, that isn't the case at the moment. We have a new Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak is trying to do his best, and the Conservative Party should be backing them rather than giving more fuel to the opposition party as we head towards that first by-election in July, and then of course a general election next year.
Alex Isaac, thank you so much indeed, taking us through the breaking news this morning that was published in the last 20 minutes or so. The parliamentary inquiry has concluded that Boris Johnson knowingly misled Parliament multiple times with his statements about parties in Downing Street that breached COVID rules. Alex Isaac, thank you so much indeed. We will come back to this story later.